Okay, so for this project now, we've got everything working that's meant to work. So we've got the motor that makes the windows go up and down. That's been tested. I know that works. We've got the motor that turns the hand once the arm is out. I've got the motor that turns the arm and brings it back in. We've got the motor that raises and lowers the arm. So that's all of those motors in place. We know they work. So now it's fitting a control system. So the control system is going to be this wheel with a flat plate curved around, running all around it, and a series of microswitches on it which will be activated at certain points as the wheel turns. So first job will be to get this wheel off, get the tyre off, and then mount it in a position here where it's not in the way, but it's also forming part of the sculpture and it's not sort of sticking out too much. So that's what's next. Right, so we've now retrieved that. It does have a cog on it, but I'm not going to use the cog because I've discovered that it takes a lot of power to turn these from the centre, and the motors I've got, as I said before, are not very strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mount a motor with a small wheel on it, on here, with a little bit of pressure, and get it to actually just push this. Maybe I'll even spring mount it. I've had success with that before. So that's what I'm going to do next. No, what I'm going to do next is actually mount it so it's standing up. So I think that is pretty much where it's going to go. So next job will be to clean these up and weld that in place. Yeah, I think that's going to work fine. Right, now I'm going to have to cut metal to go around here, flat metal that I can then weld on and make it perfectly spherical for the control for the microswitches. So that's what's next. So what I've ended up doing is getting a bicycle wheel. As you saw earlier on, we mounted that. So I need something metal on the top of the bicycle wheel to put a row of like a bank of microswitches on. It needs to be perfectly spherical so that it doesn't go up and down too much, because I'm going to need to put welds on it to operate the microswitches. So what I did was I actually found a stainless steel bowl that I had that was the right width. What I originally was going to do was going to find some thin sheet metal, maybe 1 mil sheet metal, and form that around. But I have done that in one of my other sculptures, and it wasn't perfectly. It sort of buckled a little bit. Whereas this, I think, is pretty good. So next will be a case of mounting the microswitches on it and finding some way of getting a motor to make it turn. This is day 6 on this sculpture build. So my job today is to make a bank of microswitches that will control the sculpture. So my idea being that I'm going to place these in a row with spacers in between. May not need spacers, I'll work it out. This is a bit of 3mm rod. So we have a bank of 6 of these. We have 5 motors on it, and we also have 1 motor to actually turn the wheel, the control wheel. So we'll have 6 of these in a row. Mounted on this, which will then be held against the wheel, this wheel, if it's wide enough. It may not be wide enough. I may have messed up here, we'll see. Yeah, it's just wide enough. So those 6 are going to be mounted on there. Then what I'm going to do is, just through experience, is I'm going to mount some bolts above each one that I can adjust to push them further against the wheel if needed, because I have had issues before where some of them weren't close enough, and because they're on the same rods holding them on, you can't adjust them separately. The reason why they're all on the same rod is to keep them exactly at the same place, but not only that, it's very difficult because they've got to be so close together to find a way of actually connecting them all so that they're separately adjusted. This is the only way that I can come up with. So first job now will be to get something that comes up to connect this and just hold them against the wheel. That's first job. Right, I need to make these switches demountable so that if one of them breaks I can replace it. So that end will be welded solidly to the sculpture so it can't move. The other end, I've put an electrical connector in to hold it. Just check this is working. Yeah, it's working. And then I was looking at that and I was thinking, well, that's quite a good way of holding it. So I've got this bar with a hole in, so that this slides over it, and the idea being, I don't know if it'll work yet, that you just tighten this nut and it holds it in place. It might not work, I don't know, we'll see now. I think by the look of it I might have to weld something solid on the other side of this hole to push against, because it's just turning it. So that's the next job, is to put weld something on the other side. Right, so that's now quite solid. Still a bit of an angle, but I can cope with that. That's fine. Okay, so now it's a case of attaching here. These are in a very nice bank. There's quite a bit of gap underneath so that the beads of weld or whatever I put on there are going to be able to pass it. So I do feel like I'm pretty much, all I need to do now is weld the other side onto a bar so that it's not going to move at all, and I'll lock it in place. Then it's going to be a case of attaching all the wires and coming up with a wiring board for it. So I'm quite pleased with that. That looks pretty good. So now it's a case of weld the other side off. That is solid now. Perfect. Right. So the next job now will be to solder all the wires on. Okay. I've now soldered all the wires onto these. I've done a little bit of working out which ones. So basically, that'll be window up, that'll be window down. That will be arm in and out. That one will be the arm up and down. That will be the arm waving, and that will be the wrist or the hand turning. So they're all done, but obviously with this now it's not held. So now I've got to put a bar across here with a series of bolts that I can tighten down to adjust the pressure of these so that they go onto the wheel correctly. So that's what I'm going to do next. Right, I've welded these nuts on very carefully without catching the bolts. They then have locking nuts and then bolts. Each one of these will act against a microswitch to adjust the microswitch up and down and to put more or less pressure on it to hold it closer or further away from the wheel, depending on what's needed. So they will actually go onto here. So my next job will be to weld this plate in place here. So that's what I'll get on with now. Okay, this is the end of day 6. I've spent about 3 hours on it today, and this is what we've got done so far. So these are the microswitches with all the wires that are on them. These are adjustment screws. Shall I bring it around this side? You can see that these will all be activated by lines of weld on here. That one's already too tight, I can see that, so I can just adjust that up. And these screws will just hold things in the right position so that they don't activate when they're not meant to, because obviously as with any wheel, this is not perfectly round, so I can adjust them. So yeah, and that's about it. Day 6.